Hey, this is Strawfoot. Welcome to the first ever episode of Hunter Spotlight. In this brand new YouTube series, I'll be interviewing a member of our very own Monster Hunter community once a week. If you'd like a chance to tell your Monster Hunter story, hit me up in the Discord, Twitter, or in the comments. Today in the studio, I have EA Games and IGN.com editor and creator of the web series Hop, Blip, and a Jump, Jared Petty. I'm here with Jared Petty. And Jared, you worked for IGN, you worked for EA Games.
Yeah.
And you have a long history in the industry. And you also lived in Japan for a long time.
I did. From 2008 to 2011, I lived in Japan. A good time to live in Japan if Monster Hunter was your thing.
Yeah. So that's what this is about, is what was your experience with Monster Hunter? How was living in Japan? Because I feel like the game there is a part of the culture.
It is, and I was there at a time when the game was really becoming a part of the culture, or had just become a part of the culture. The PlayStation Portable was not particularly successful until the rise of Monster Hunter, and that changed everything for the platform. It became a national obsession, and for me, Monster Hunter is really not so much a game as a series of cultural memories.
Yeah.
Monster Hunter is something I experienced not really through playing, so much as going to the local McDonald's on a Saturday.
Right.
And there would be 4 seats at every square table around. And at every table, there would be 4 people, all hunched over their PSPs, all doing the claw, all playing ad hoc wireless network Monster Hunter together.
Right.
And the next table was another group. And the next table was another group. And if you got on a train, there would be clusters of 4 people sitting side by side playing Monster Hunter. If you went to a train station, standing around waiting.
That's what I've been told, that it was a social activity there, and that you could just see people playing everywhere on street corners or on trains, and which is totally different than the way we play games here in the West, where we're usually on a sofa by ourselves in the dark.
Oh, my favorite was seeing people just crouch. People in Japan often crouch for comfort when they're hanging out with friends. And so you'll see people in public often crouching and talking. My favorite was you go outside to 7-Eleven, there'd be a group of teenagers just crouching in a circle playing Monster Hunter.
And you can get Slurpee cups there with Monster Hunter characters on them. I've seen those too.
I never bought a Monster Hunter Slurpee cup when I was there.
Oh, you should have.
I should have indeed. I got that Mega Man 10 hat for you, but that was about it.
So what would you compare it to? Do we have games in the West that have had that kind of impact on our society or our culture?
We have, but they're very rare. It's very rare that a game can sell a system at all. A real killer app is extraordinarily rare, and that certainly was what Monster Hunter was for the PSP in Japan. Really did save the platform in a lot of ways. But here in the States, obviously, the phenomenon of Super Mario Brothers or Pac-Man Fever, or the effect maybe that Doom had on the PC market.
Yeah.
Wii Sports, I think, is comparable. The games that change the landscape. There are very few of those.
Maybe Pokemon on the Game Boy or 3DS to an extent.
That's true, because Pokemon revitalized the Game Boy. People forget Pokemon was a very late Game Boy game. Pokemon came out like 8 years after the Game Boy was new. Yeah. And it reinvigorated the handheld gaming market single-handedly. That's a great example, Jesse.
Yeah. So where do you see the future of the game? As popular as World has made this series, where does it go from here? Do you think it remains popular in the West, or is this something that just stays in Japan?
No, I think after World, we see Monster Hunter return to the West. I'd be shocked if Capcom doesn't recognize that doubling the potential size of the purchasing market isn't a great idea. And the success of World means that I think a lot of the design refinements that are into World will continue in the next iteration of Monster Hunter in Japan and here, because I'm not deeply imbued in the Monster Hunter community, would never pretend to be. But I get the impression that most Monster Hunter people were just glad that more people were playing Monster Hunter.
Right.
And they're totally willing to deal with things like, hey, I don't have to pack my sharpening stones anymore. Those are always there.
Yes.
Well, fine. I can live with that. I don't mind losing the joy of packing my sharpening stones.
Sure.
If that means another several 100,000 people are going to play Monster Hunter.
But do you think that, if we keep changing things to make the game friendly to a Western audience, at what point do we fundamentally change the game so much that it's not what people enjoyed in the first place? Is that something that happens, or you not see it? Do you not see it that way?
Historically, that has happened to some
Uh-huh.
series, but I think more often than not, people understand what makes their property tick. And in a property like Monster Hunter, where there's such a well-established annual tradition of what the game is and should be,
Yeah.
they know not to mess with it too much because these changes may seem huge to the Monster Hunter community,
Right.
but they're not seismic
Right.
alterations
World
that were made.
is still fundamentally Monster Hunter. It is very much a Monster Hunter game, and despite the changes.
Yeah, it's still fundamentally a Monster Hunter game at heart, and as long as it's about that community activity where you have a group of 4 hunters that are bringing down an animal that reacts in different semi-predictable ways, where as long as pursuit is part of it and learning the patterns and learning the unpredictability and having different roles that complement each other in very distinctive ways, as long as it doesn't become too standardized, I think Monster Hunter will remain a viable and a compelling product.
So when you play Monster Hunter, tell me about what draws you to the game and how do you like to play it? Because I feel like everybody plays Monster Hunter different.
Oh, I play weird. I play wrong.
Okay.
I said I wasn't a member of the Monster Hunter community. Generally speaking, you have to drag me kicking and screaming into multiplayer online gaming.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with the media. As a matter of fact, it's a brilliant, wonderful thing that makes the lives of millions very happy.
Absolutely.
But usually it's not my cup of tea.
Uh-huh.
So I, most of the time, solo Monster Hunter.
You solo Monster Hunter.
I do.
Okay.
I know that's the opposite of the point of Monster Hunter.
Yeah.
And yes, of course, I've played with other people. But by and large, I just want people to leave me alone in the woods and let me hunt my monster. I
So-
want to be. I like that experience.
So why do you worry that you're going to drag other hunters down, or that they're going to drag you down, or what is it that makes you enjoy the game solo more than multiplayer?
It's several factors. One is that I'm not as good as
Okay.
most people I know who play, and so I have to be carried when
Uh-huh.
I play multiplayer. I just do. So some of it is that, but I understand people are willing to carry you, and that's part of what makes multiplayer gaming fun. I think for me more, Jesse, it's that this is going to seem strange, but I've done real world hunting.
Uh-huh.
And I've never enjoyed hunting with others.
Okay.
I like the experience of going out alone into the wild and experiencing nature by myself. And for me, Monster Hunter is kind of an odd simulation of that in a strange world I can never actually visit.
Yeah, I love it. It's so true.
And so when I go out there, I want to be by myself. And I know I'm missing out on most of the strategic depth of the game by that.
But there are people that miss out on the other side of it too. Because for me, I do hunt solo sometimes, and I enjoy it. And there's times where I'll get messages like, "Come hunt with me." Nope, I'm having me time. I'm just exploring the world and taking things slow and wandering around and seeing what I can find. And that's definitely part of the game. So I think that there's so many different ways to enjoy the game, and you should try to experience all of them.
Yeah, you should try. And I had a lot of fun when I have played with
Uh-huh.
friends. Of course, it's not nearly. It's just I tend to find myself gravitating back toward that. I love seeing World take off because it's a property that's deserved to succeed in the West for years. Monster Hunter's obduracy, its weird like kind of obtuseness is part of its appeal for me. I like games that are not instantly discernible
Yeah.
in every things that take a while to figure out. I really enjoy that. I also love games that are super instantly comprehensible. I tend to lean one or the other. Like something that's in the middle I'm not as big
extremes.
on, but I either want it to be like Pac-Man. You look at Pac-Man, you know what you're supposed to do in like 10
Right.
seconds.
Right.
I love that. But all the other end, I want my RPG style games to be kind of crunchy and weird and require you to really start to understand what's happening under the surface. And Monster Hunter demands that of you. You can still get that in
Well,
single
yeah,
player.
I mean, it's a game that created its own genre of game. When people ask what type of game is Monster Hunter, it's a hunting game.
Yeah.
And it was the first hunting game. And that's something you don't see too often. I mean, early video games, you talked about Pac-Man, that was also a game that sort of created a genre, created a style of gameplay.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's funny because we've kind of seen that single screen game come and go through the
Mhm.
history of video games, and I like the fact that games do come and go. There will be a time sooner or later
Mhm.
where Monster Hunter is not a perennial hit.
Yeah.
There's going to be a period of time where it doesn't do as well. But that also gives me faith that hunting games will rise again when that finally does come around. By the way, I'm not predicting the
Okay.
fall of Monster Hunter or anything. But I do think that sometimes games have to have time to breathe.
Mm-hmm.
And Monster Hunter's iterative approach is more tolerant toward longer lifespan. But there may come a time when some of the audience moves on, and then in a couple of years, there's been a break, and they come back and some new hunting style game, either a Monster Hunter game that comes along later on, or another hunter, resurfaces people like, oh yeah, I remember what made this great.
Yeah, yeah.
And a whole new generation discovers it. That's happened in practically every genre of video gaming. You see it come and go in cycles. 2D platformers, which just vanished for years, and then now are healthier than they've ever been. And now when you see 3D platformers returning with stuff like Mario Odyssey or Ukulele.
Isn't it great?
Yeah, it is great. It's wonderful. Now suddenly I can see play Spyro? What?
Yeah.
It's really weird.
Yeah.
And that genre was largely dead.
Yep.
Someday, hunting will take a dive.
Uh-huh.
And then it'll come back.
Yeah.
And I'm happy about that. That makes me feel good about things.
Well, Jared, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate having you here.
Thank you for having me, Strawfoot.